But wouldn't it be interesting if Gypsy did the same? Whoa, I just got chills because that's all kinds of levels of fascinating given her potential growing up history and everything. Oh my word. Oh, this just got real good. Good morning, guys. So I went to bed far too late last night, and you get to see my I didn't get enough sleep face. Also, I'm pretty sure I'm having an allergic reaction to my husband's adorable cat, who, well, he has two of them, and I'm allergic to them, but I love them, so I put up with it. Anyway, so I've been wanting to do a video about Ryan Anderson, and I wasn't sure if I was just going to kind of create my own from scratch, like I had done with others, but there was a video I'd seen a while ago that I can't find anymore, that kind of went into his psychology, likely what is going on in his psychology. So I found this one, and I actually didn't watch most of it, but just from the very start, I could tell that it was hitting on similar topics and topics that I agree with Ryan. So just to kind of summarize what I already believe is likely true, and then we'll kind of see what they say in the video. I've seen Ryan as someone who is very deeply insecure. I feel like I say that about everyone, and it's not intended to be like a. I think everyone's deeply insecure, even though it's probably true. But he just always came off as someone to me who wanted to project an image of like. I was thinking about it last night, and I don't mean this to be an insult, although it's kind of like tongue in cheek, like a larger than life personality. I think he wants the world to see him as someone who's a confident, competent guy with a larger than life personality and a big heart. Elements of that could be true, but I really think that he's someone who is extremely insecure. I think he's very dissatisfied in himself and has been for a very long time. Now that he's getting whatever the surgery is for his stomach, I wanted to tread carefully on the whole like weight issue because I don't want to be insensitive or offensive, but it's obviously something that can't be ignored. And so I think since he got the surgery, that kind of to me confirms, and please let me know if I'm wrong, I haven't studied on this, but I feel like that confirms it's not just like a health issue contributing to that. It really is a difficulty with regulating food intake. And I just, long story short, see that as an effort to comfort himself against something likely that must have happened or a series of events that happened way long ago. And he's spent a lot of years comforting himself with food, but then actually like pushing people away through that. Because if you can kind of wrap yourself in the comfort of food, it literally creates a barrier between you and other people. And it makes it harder to have true intimacy, not even, sexually, but like just in relationships in general. It's harder for people to get to your real heart if you're doing this. I can't really see my arms, but like if you're literally kind of doing this with your body to others, it's a self-protective measure. So he's probably got some kind of difficulty that he's been running away from for a long time. I commend him for wanting to get healthier, but I do worry that rather than actually facing whatever that thing is head on and learning what he needs to do to move forward in life healthfully, with that being part of his past, I worry that instead he's just kind of band-aiding that over with the surgery. And I think that if that's true, that could kind of play into his mentality in general. And another thing I wanted to say really quickly, and it doesn't necessarily make sense, but the lower someone's self-esteem is, the higher their pride likely is. The two really do go hand in hand. It probably doesn't make sense, but it's true. So I wouldn't be shocked if he has extremely low self-esteem, which inherently actually means he's probably very prideful deep down inside, which then would tie into the potential decisions not to really face whatever he might be running away from, but just do what he thinks is best and kind of avoid what's really needed. Anyway, that was a lot of rambling. It'll be interesting to see what these people have to say. All right, so let us get to it.
Move over and talk more about the husband a little bit, because this is a very bizarre dynamic. Again, I'm not trying to rain on the parade that everybody seems to want to have for Gypsy right now, but again, I'm not one to say, let's go cheer on something that looks like it could be potentially very dangerous or disastrous for someone who's already only experienced drama and trauma their entire life. Let's talk about the profile of someone who gets online or writes that letter into the jail and says, hey, I think you're really cute, to someone like this, who was portrayed in the documentary that he watched as being a mentally and physically disabled child. That to me is a little bit disturbing, very disturbing, especially considering his career was working with disabled children. And now, I got a thing for her. Unpack that.
Sorry, I'll be very curious to hear what she has to say. And that's something that I wasn't super aware of until I had watched some videos other people made about Ryan. The valid point that, like, interesting that he surrounded himself with a certain type of child and just children in general, and then pursued Gypsy, who was very vulnerable. And in the video that I can't find, I lost my train of thought, but I think it is accurate that he is trying to bolster his self-esteem by being in a position of sort of power and authority over less capable individuals through being a teacher. And obviously, I mean, teachers are overworked, underpaid, incredible people. I'm not trying to say I don't trust teachers, but given the everything that is Ryan, I don't really trust potentially his motivation for getting into teaching. So I'm wondering if they're going to get into that with this video.
That a little.
Yeah, he presents very affable, very kind, which kind of surprised me that he presents as well as he does. But there are many layers to people. It's like peeling an onion, and it is a strange thing to do. We study a lot people who write to prisoners. What is that all about? And it's usually someone that has often very low self-esteem. They don't feel that they're marketable out in the real world as far as dating or finding a partner. And a prisoner represents a captive audience. The prisoner is very emotionally needy. And so usually this person that tries to romance a prisoner is also emotionally needy. So you have two.
Oh, that's so interesting. And that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I could tell that as well, just from the verbiage that he used in some of the interviews and that's another thing that I meant to mention. I really do believe, and hopefully they get into this, I really believe he wrapped his identity up in being with Gypsy Rose, because he likely, I imagine, someone either told him or he told himself for a long time that he wasn't worth it and wasn't really that valuable. And so he self-medicated with food. I would imagine likely something happened in his past that made him feel like he was never really going to be able to be loved. And he kind of lived with that mantra, even though he wants love and he wants marriage. But there, I think, was probably always part of him that's like, nope, I'll never be able to get that. So I'm just going to comfort myself with food, and I'm going to shove people away subconsciously by getting big so that I can never get hurt that way again. That's a lot of times how people handle it differently in life, but a lot of times people make a decision that is a subconscious effort towards never losing control in the way that control was lost before, never getting hurt the way they were hurt before. It's just a self-protective measure. So in his interviews with Gypsy, when he'd say, like, I've got this to go home to, like, it sounds adorable, but I could tell that he was saying, I'm protected because now I'm married and I've got a woman, so I'm okay. But if that woman goes away, such as how Gypsy did, are you still okay without the woman in your life? And I don't think, hopefully my eyes red. Hopefully he's becoming healthier in his thinking, but I don't think initially with the divorce with Gypsy, I don't think he was in a headspace to accept that he is valid and worthy outside of having a wife. So it's probably rough.
Two not so healthy pieces coming together, and it's generally not good. They tend to be also prone to fantasy, and often it's a rescue fantasy, that I'm going to be, in this case again, Prince Charming, that can swoop in and really provide what this person needs and change their life. So they get a sense of power with that. And for a person who's disabled, even more so. And she needs a parent more than she needs a husband right now, because, as I said, she doesn't have the skills to know.
That's so fascinating and so true. I think in an interview he did talk about himself being Prince Charming. Now, maybe he was prompted with whoever asked the question was like, do you feel like you are her Prince Charming? But it was interesting to hear him say, I do feel like I'm her Prince Charming. That's a very self-aggrandizing term. And I believe also some of the physicality that he would do in his earlier interviews, I think he tries to project an image of self-assurance that comes from an internal battle of years and years and years of saying, I'm not good enough, I'm not good, I'm a loser, I'm whatever. So I think when Gypsy came into his life and all of a sudden now I've got a wife, he's like, yeah, I am totally her Prince Charming. Yeah, just very unhealthy. I feel like, oh yeah, and Gypsy needing a parent more than a husband. Like, how profound is that? But it's so true. She needs, assuming, I've been seeing things, and I'm not going to get into conspiracy theories, but I've been seeing some theories as to the legitimacy of like her entire story. So Lord only knows. But theoretically, she needs an actual parent for the first time in her life. So how can you go into being married without ever having had any parental figure basically at all in your life? I mean, of course, I know people have really messed up histories and they figure life out and they become, wonderful partners. And those are I feel like the few and far between people. Sorry, I don't even know what my hair is doing. They are the few and far between very fortunate folk. But in her case, she's never really even theoretically had a real parent. So I agree.
Know how to be a partner in an adult way.
Yeah.
The other piece of it, which is concerning, is there's often this sense of, well, I get a sense of basking in the glow of this famous person. Mm-hmm. And even if the person is famous for something negative, they still like the attention. Yep. And I don't think they're consciously aware of this, because a lot of these things happen underneath conscious awareness, but that sense of wanting to be powerful, of having somebody that really needs them emotionally, that's not going to leave them because they have impairments or deficits in certain ways.
And that was something I was pondering last night in terms of food. And again, I don't want to speak into something that I don't have a ton of personal experience with. I have my own health issues, so I can't eat as much food as I would like to, but outside of that, but I was envisioning that part of some people's pursuit of overly indulging in food is because food can't say no. And food can't turn around and disappoint you and break your heart. Food is food, and you can choose to have all of it or none of it. You can be in control of the food. And that's probably been a motivating factor with Ryan with food in his life, and then potentially also with Gypsy. It's like, oh, she can't say no. She needs me. So, just interesting.
And the attention seeking. So you put all those things together and, we don't really know what this guy is like. We just see this affable presentation right now. So there could be a dark side.
I mean, I don't know what to make of him. I'm just going off of the data points that we have and what we know of where he was working, what he was doing, what he has said he did to get in contact with her. And just you put those pieces together, and if you're not just looking at it through rose-colored glasses, it looks weird. It looks like there's something off. At least that's my opinion of it. What was your take on the interactions that we saw with them both in that documentary?
I have a hard time sometimes using the term weird. I mean, it's very weird. It's very strange. But I would imagine that a lot of people who fall into these odd lifestyle choices and odd patterns I would be shocked if Ryan hadn't spent many years thinking and telling himself, I'm the weird one. I'm weird. There's something weird about me. And so I personally have a little bit of a hard time using that term, because I don't ever want to use a term that someone has used for many years as basically a lie to themselves. But I do want to use terms that ideally, and I mean, I'm learning so much about all this. By no means do I see myself as a super knowledgeable person, but I want to use terms that are illuminating in a way that a person may never have heard before. So rather than saying, hey, Ryan, you're weird, I would rather talk about like, hey, Ryan, I think you're really scared, and I think you're really confused, and I think you're really worried about XYZ, and let's talk about some of these things that, if those things are true, led into these unhealthy behaviors, rather than just you're weird. But it is weird. It's weird. I'm not going to
lie. And also in recent interviews in terms of control or controlling. Does this seem like someone who is a controlling person? One would almost assume that there's some element of that if you're initially hooking up with somebody who is locked in a cage and can't leave. That seems like probably appealing to someone who finds that to be a need in a relationship.
Yeah, because the person who has the power is the person who's the more mature one, who has real world skills. I mean, I can't imagine she knows about credit cards or how to manage her money or how to write a check, so he's going to be in this father position. And that may work for her for a while. But usually in those kind of relationships, when let's say the less developed person grows up, then that relationship no longer fits. And one of the things I noticed,
because there's no longer that power dynamic where there's the pursuit of being the more powerful one. And I just said in a recent video, experience does not always equal maturity. Ideally, it should and would, but for a lot of people, they have all kinds of life experience but are not emotionally mature with how they handle things, with how they process things. And I would argue the same is likely true for Ryan. Of course, he knows how to do all the credit card things and the driving and the living the life as a full-grown adult. It doesn't guarantee he's actually emotionally mature enough to be a husband. And given the fact that he pursued Gypsy and chose to marry her while she was still in prison, yada, yada, I don't believe he's emotionally mature, and I can't say it, emotionally mature enough to be a husband at this time. Could he potentially be? Yes, but honestly, I think he needs a lot of professional help before even going there. So
that it just kind of made my skin crawl is how often he calls her baby.
Yeah.
And that's his term of endearment for her. And, every now and then somebody saying, hey, babe, or something like that, that seems normal. But to consistently refer to your partner as baby, and it's kind of got this little, like I'm nurturing you quality. And that's also something that I tuned in on. And I just said, that just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I mean,
it is weird, but that's also something that I've picked up with Gypsy when she recounts stories, I think, of each of the guys she dated, or I don't know. And that's interesting. The lady brings it up because that's a thought that I have had, that Gypsy seems to jump to the baby term very quickly. And I always found that very interesting because I don't have a ton of experience with dating. That's what I find so hilarious. I'm married and I feel like I have almost zero experience with dating. But in my definition of calling someone baby, that would only happen after an extended period of closeness and comfort. I mean, granted, I know Gypsy and Ryan had been legally married for years, so I guess that's one thing. But I felt like with her, she just kind of moved to it very quickly, potentially, and that's interesting. So it's interesting that this lady's coming at the angle from Ryan using baby a lot and kind of infantilizing her, but wouldn't it be interesting if Gypsy did the same? Whoa, I just got chills because that's all kinds of levels of fascinating given her potential growing up history and everything. Oh my word. Oh, this just got real good.
There was a lot of those moments I thought felt bizarre. I mean, and the aspect you were speaking of earlier, this fantasy, I'm paraphrasing here, but I do remember seeing in one of the documentaries him flat out saying, I do believe I am her Prince Charming. I do believe I was sent here to fulfill this role. That's not how the world works. That's not how relationships work. It's not you're a Prince Charming and you were sent here on this mission. No, you were attracted to someone who presented as a disabled child. And then you sent a letter in, and you're trying to normalize this with, my friend sent a letter to Tiger King, and I'm going to write to Gypsy Rose.
Right.
There seems to be a level of knowledge here, at least somewhat on the surface of, yeah, this is a little bit weird. This is a little bit off, and having to constantly justify your relationship with, I never intended to be in a relationship with her, although you talked to her and praised her for the first part of your letter, and then gave your life story.
Yeah. You don't fall into accidentally dating an incarcerated person. I mean, so many people have stories where they're like, yeah, we were just friends. And then we ended up being like, you know what? Yeah, let's do a little more than just the friendship thing. So obviously that happens, but there are scenarios where that does not happen. It's like when people say they do online dating, trying to find friends and then maybe something else. It's like, no, I always found that to be such a ridiculous statement. If you meet someone online, the first time you meet up is a date. Now, does it mean that you're going to go on a second date ever? Does it mean that you can stand the person at all? No. But if you meet someone online, you're not meeting as a friend, it's a date. So similarly with him, you don't just write an inmate and then accidentally discover you are their Prince Charming and get married. There's always, from day one, been a part of you that thought, you know what, if this person gets interested in me, I'm down for that. And that's, I will not say weird, that is interesting and somewhat slightly deeply concerning.
The two are incongruent statements.
Yeah, very much, very much. And you can see how important he feels now because she was released to his custody when she left prison, and she needs him. And so I think this is a guy who maybe didn't feel important in many parts of his life or didn't feel marketable per se. And now he's got this very dependent woman, and, you know, the world is watching and he's getting...
I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back here, and I don't usually want to do that, but the fact that this lady's a psychologist, I get them psychotherapist, an author. I'm sorry, I get everything confused. But I'm just going to do a little pat on the back for calling it out before she even said it. It means that I'm starting to learn how to think along the lines of someone in that field, which makes me really happy. Anyway, yeah, I will. Oh, that made me so happy.
Lots of attention, and apparently a lot of people do think he's wonderful. So as I said, he presents affable, but there's got to be layers there that are of concern.
Hey, it's Tony Bruschi. If you like the podcast, be sure to like, subscribe.
I will, since I have you on video right now, I will like and I will subscribe. There we go. Because I would feel like a terrible person if I didn't do that right now. Anyway, yeah, so, I mean, they said everything that I thought. I really think Ryan is just someone who's very insecure and scared, or was, at least. I really hope that he's learning a lot and growing and maturing a lot. The whole Prince Charming thing, I mean, like, in my past, I had a very, I without realizing, I really kind of created a movie-esque scenario in my head that was not reality. And it took me years to finally accept that. And that came from naivety and inexperience. And so I wouldn't be shocked if Ryan doesn't have a ton of dating experience, and that's not meant to be an insult, just based on his behavior. I wouldn't be shocked if he didn't have a ton of dating experience and therefore kind of created this movie-esque scenario with Gypsy. I mean, it literally was. Basically, they had cameras in their faces ever since ever, and didn't actually beforehand or during, and hopefully now is after, processing the reality of what was truly going on the whole time. So yeah, I hope he can learn from this and become wiser and not just continue in the hamster wheel. I get a little worried that he is more of a hamster wheel thinker rather than okay, where was I wrong? Where was I immature? Where am I running from my past where I need to really process it so that I stop making choices that are just feeding back into running from my past, you know? Anyway, I'm just rambling at this point. I had coffee and I'm not sorry. But yeah, that was a really interesting video. Hopefully this is helpful in just kind of explaining where I stand with my thoughts on Ryan. Yeah, let me know y'all's thoughts. All right, I'll talk to you later.